we're going to go into questions right now. Jim, thank you for your presentation, and Tom Blakeman. And we have Robert Bussey and also Jim Gardner to answer questions. So most of these don't say who the questions are to. So I'm just going to ask the question, and then they can kind of decide amongst themselves who's going to answer. All right, first question. Explain how the POA is a developer when the declaration and articles are passed.
Say it again.
Explain how the POA is a developer, I guess would become a developer, when the declaration and articles are passed. Who wants to take this? Okay, Tom.
Well, I think the simple answer is, and I guess this is on, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the simple answer is that one declaration that allows the POA to bring land into the village. The whole problem is that you're wanting to keep Cooper from doing it. Mr. Cooper has no desire, but apparently the POA wants to have that right. The only reason you could want to do that is to be doing some developing. And there's quite a number of others.
Thank you. Okay, how can the POA sell water sewer services outside of the village to Jessieville School without crossing Cooper's easement?
That's a very good question. The only way that they can get to the facilities is to cross the easement that is owned by John Cooper. It's a 10-foot easement. Now, I saw in next year's budget, there's a line item for hooking the water line up, the backup water line up for Heron. I don't know if y'all remember 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we had an agreement. So they think they can do it.
So that question could also be asked to Mr. Cooper when he has his office hours open, which are Monday through Wednesday, and he's available to answer those questions. So please, everybody.
A slight correction. The 10-foot strip around Hot Springs Village is not an easement. It's actually property that belongs to CCI.
Correct. That's right. Okay. How can we get rid of the present POA leadership and the board members? Well, there are procedures and bylaws that have to be followed. So until the
only way
Oh, go ahead.
that you can get rid of our CEO is for the board to dismiss, fire, whatever you want to call it. There is no good, easy way of getting rid of board members. So basically, the only way that we can initiate change is to elect like-minded, and I say like-minded, like us, to the board. And if the board gets a change in philosophy, et cetera, then it will be their responsibility, if they so choose, to dismiss the CEO. Because the board hires and fires the CEO.
Thank you. Okay, a lot of questions here for Mr. Cooper. Well, Mr. Cooper has stated that he will not buy any additional property to develop and bring under the POA's financial responsibility. Will he make the same commitment regarding assigning his declarant rights to another developer? Again, that's a question that Mr. Cooper can answer, and we the people didn't invite Mr. Cooper as a guest presenter. He came here in the audience, so I'm not comfortable with continuing to hammer him with questions because he's available. So y'all can go, those that you want to talk to him, go and visit him.
Let me just interject something. I don't want to put words in Mr. Cooper's mouth, but I don't think he's gonna give his rights away. I mean, he's a businessman, folks.
I didn't want to come here to be disruptive. I want to hear what other opinions and what these gentlemen have to say. But if there are questions like that you want answered, please come see me. We spoke at the second We the People forum, and there was rumblings that We the People's is funded by CCI or is the mouthpiece of the developer. That's just not true. And so we were invited once as a guest, and we'll speak at other venues. I think I'm at the Kiwanis Club, or I'll come to like a neighborhood. But I didn't want to go and speak at a venue that I've already visited with, and it was unfortunate because there were a lot of people that weren't able to come in because of the overflow situation and fire hazard, I believe. But those questions I'll be happy to answer and have a conversation about these items at the office. That's all I'm asking is come, meet me, hear my side, and make up your own mind on how you should vote. At the outset, this is an election. We respect it. It's y'all's right to have this election, but I just don't think all the facts were getting out, and that's why we were here. So please come see me at the office if you have any questions, and direct the questions that these gentlemen have for We the People. They can't put words in, like you said, they can't speak on behalf of me, but I didn't want to hijack this. I really wanted to try to get everybody to come see me at the office. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Okay, is Nally's salary personal information and protected? Who can answer that?
What was the question?
Is Miss Nally's salary personal information and protected?
Yes.
No, it is not.
No,
Well,
it's not.
So who's going to answer that? Jean, were you?
In CCI's lawsuit, it spells out the Arkansas law that says what personal information is. Personal information is your credit card number, the password, your passwords to your financial dealings online, and a salary at a corporation is not protected under any Arkansas law. And I think that the Rose Law Firm knows this because they spelled it out in their lawsuit. So they can stick by their policy guide, which says they'll protect the personal information of their employees. But if you look at the definition of personal information, it doesn't cover salaries. It's mostly health care records and financial records, plus the passwords that go along with those.
Okay, thanks, Jean. This one has been asked many times, I recall, and it's also, the documents are on the We the People website under important information. The question is, who authored the luxury RV park agreement? Who authored it?
Twigs and a developer.
Pardon me?
Twigs and a developer.
Twigs and a developer, I guess, that came in.
Linda Mayhood wrote the piece of paper up and signed it.
Okay, that document is on our website under important information.
The only involvement that Cooper had with that whole deal was he agreed to sell the property to the developer if everything went through. Obviously, everything did not go through and the deal fell through. But Cooper did not have anything to do with that RV park except he was gonna sell the land.
We don't know who authored the agreement, but we know who signed it.
Right.
It was Harvey W.C. Shelton and Jay Howard. Jay Howard was the developer. Harvey Shelton was the president of the Hot Springs Village POA. So you would think that if Cooper had anything to do with it, they would at least get a signing block on the agreement. They don't have one.
I'm going through these because a whole lot of them have been written for the CCI to answer. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll share these, give them to him, and they can be available to him while you go visit him at his office. Okay, this question, I'm not sure who it's to. It says, are you going to agree to meet with the board October 29th? I guess that's to Mr. Cooper too. So I'll give this to him also. Okay, here's the next one. Do the two electric companies pay Mr. Cooper any money each year for easements or other reasons? Do anybody know this other than Mr. Cooper? Save that for him. Okay.
While Lori's going through questions and what have you, I'd like to just throw a little bit in that folks just stop and think. This whole vote, which side you're on, what have you, involves who do you trust. And if you trust the CEO, and if you trust our board of directors, and you're happy with what they're doing, then I'm sure that all the information that they've put out, et cetera, you're gonna vote yes. If you are not happy with what our leadership is doing, I suggest that you seriously consider voting no. Why would you, if you're unhappy with what they are doing, and we all know that leadership is begging to have all this stuff voted in their favor, but you're unhappy with it, why would you vote for it? All you're doing is, with your vote, is saying, yes, board, yes, CEO, I agree with you. You're doing a good job. So think about who do you trust. You don't really have to have a deep down insight into each one of these things and what have you. Just think about who do you trust.
All right, we have another question. The question is, we now only increase our annual assessments by a regional consumer price index that has, after 12 years, left us with over 40 million operations and maintenance shortfall. So, Jean, you might want to answer this. Tell us why an upper limit 5% threshold is not a smart way to get well.
Let me direct your attention to a document that the POA put out. It's called Setting the Record Straight. Yes for Independence. Sorry. The POA put out a document called Setting the Record Straight. And they show a claim and then they show a fact. The claim was keep our dues under control, and the fact was, this is a reply from the POA. Allowing an increase of up to 5% gives the POA board the opportunity to reduce the $45 million backlog in needed repairs and infrastructure maintenance. $45 million in backlog. I don't know if you know it, but my name was on the lawsuit suing the POA over the two-tier assessment. They told us at the time, if we passed that assessment, that we wouldn't have to worry about another assessment increase of any kind until 2020. Now they're telling us there's a $45 million backlog. Where did all that money go from a two-tier assessment increase? It all goes back to trust. And I trust people who have shown over a period of time that their word is good, that they do what they say. The POA board, to me, has proven time and again they don't do what they say. They tell you one thing and do something else. And if this is not proof, I don't know what is. And it goes back to the many stumbles, fumbles, and bad decisions they've made. Anything from the $6 million to increase the water output by 50%, that it never materialized. We paid the money, but we've never used the water. We use the same amount of water now that we did in 2011 before they even started working on the water treatment plant. And you can go through episode after episode of bad decisions. The geothermal heating and cooling system they put in, and I found out today they actually put them in 2 different locations, and both of them failed. And together it cost over $1 million to replace those things. To get more current, whatever happened to the software improvements that was going to make the gates automatic when you came to it? So here's a group of people, time after time, promise something and don't deliver. To me, they're not trustworthy. Cooper and Cooper Communities has never promised something and then reneged on their word. They've never left the village. They own over 1,200 acres. And why should he come down here and have to hold our hand? Aren't we capable of running this place? Must Cooper be here every day to tell us what we're doing wrong? Obviously he is. He also has a business to run. He's got other developments that he has to take care of too. I know for a fact his staff is very unhappy with him because he's spending time down here when he should be paying attention to CCI and their business. I appreciate him being down here, but it's obvious he can't by himself make this place work. And the only way it's going to work is for us to tell the POA board they're going to have to do what we want and not what they want.
Laura, could I say one thing?
Okay, the cards that you see me putting down here on this stool are all questions for
Let me,
Mr. Cooper.
let me ask, has anyone in here seen a list of the maintenance items that quantify that $45 million? Do we know it's true? Do you believe it might be true?
Leslie says it's true, so it must be true.
This right here is money.
Okay,
What else? If she says it, I'm sure it's true.
okay. Okay, next question. Why does Mr. Cooper only allow us, property owners, to make declaration and articles of incorporation changes every 7 years? Tom wants to answer that.
Well, we went over this earlier. The whole idea about that, it was originally 10 years in the original declarations. And when a developer comes in and is going to spend a long period of time developing a piece of property, he wants control. And some 20, 30 years later, the POA went to him and said, look, we'd like to be able to maybe do this more frequently. And it was reduced to 7 years. But the fact of the matter is that your values here depend on stability. And if you're going to change the rules in the middle of every football game, nobody's going to watch football anymore. It's as simple as that. So there's nothing in the votes that needs to be done to help the POA fix the problems that we have, and yes, we have some. There's nothing in there that they need for that. It's all there to give them more power to do whatever they want, whenever they want it, and to help facilitate this monster that they call the CMP. I know we've put the town center off now. We're not going to talk about it anymore till next September. But you and I both know that it's out there, and until the CMP is repealed or done away with, and we get people that are actually minding their business and doing the maintaining and so forth that is their given assignment in the declarations, we're going to always have trouble. It's not a matter of changing the rules every year.
Lori, if I could add
Go ahead.
something, have you ever wondered why there's a limit on when you can make changes to the declaration? Arkansas has a law, like most states do, that you can't obligate land in perpetuity. You can't say that I will never sell my land, and my kids will never sell the land, and my kids' kids won't sell the land. So there's a law that says you have to put a time limit on it, because if you put a piece of property in perpetuity, it can never be sold, really. So it started out that it was 21 years because they figured that 21 years was when a person reached maturity. And that's changed over a period of time. And like Tom said, ours was, at one time was 10 years. And now we've lowered it to 7 years. And it's because there's a law against having anything, any property, any real property in perpetuity.
Thank you, Gene. This is a kind of a statement. It's regarding the duration clause. Some vote no people say they still may vote yes on the duration, but please remember then our CEO and board of directors will be allowed to campaign all the time.
We will
So,
be paying
Yes,
for it.
Is that, somebody want to comment on that? I think we have.
right. We can vote on this, every year if you want, every 6 months. But remember, folks, votes cost money.
$50,000 for that brochure.
So if you want to vote once a year to change the declarations, be prepared to spend some money to do it. Also remember that the declarations are tied to your property, and the more frequent changes that you make decrease the value of your land or your property. So changing the declarations every year is going to reduce the value of your property. People are not going to want to buy in Hot Springs Village when they know that next year the game could change.
Okay, thank you. Robert, question. Can the POA approve special assessments on their own with the new declarations if they're voted in? Who wants to answer that? Tom?
No, they can't. Special assessments would still have to be voted on. The trick here is that they want to get rid of the I want to call it two-tier, but it's the veto of one class over another. They want to make it easier to pass things like an assessment increase. So here again, I think if we're going to spend a few $1 million to build some new facility or finance some development or whatever it is that the POA might decide to do, it needs to be a decision that's taken very seriously, and it's got to be hard to make it happen. And as I said earlier, I believe if it was the right thing to do, our developer, Mr. Cooper, sitting over here, would go along with the program. But I feel like he's a guy that we could also depend on to perhaps keep that from happening if it was not such a good idea.
You know, were you able to hear
We've
that?
already done that.
No, the rest of the people probably weren't able to hear that.
I didn't hear all of that, Tormy.
can't do that.
That's what they did with the two-tier.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's exactly right, Tormy. It's a matter of, we've got more non-residents that would vote for something that doesn't affect them if that's how they chose to implement it, just like they did the two-tier. Now, personally, I would be the first to agree that perhaps the dues here are lower than they need to be. But that's not a problem you solve overnight, and it's not a problem that happened, yesterday. This has been going on for decades. People were paying low dues and enjoying, the benefits. And meanwhile, the 45 million in backlog of maintenance was building up. And yeah, sure, some of this should have been done a long time ago. They did the two-tier thing. That's a precedent now. It could be done again. But if it's going to get done, it needs to be hard to do. Whatever it is that they do needs to be difficult, not easy. And the changes they want are all about making these things easier.
As far as the two-tier thing goes, back here, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, everybody says, well, Cooper voted for it. He went along with it. I don't know. He either didn't vote or he went along with it. And I believe that the reason that he either didn't vote or went along with it is he realized that we needed the money. And through seeing our track record of getting increases passed, he saw, like a lot of people saw, the only way we were going to get an increase was to go the two-tier. So he's not a bad guy. If he thinks something is reasonable, he'll go along with it.
I'd like to keep the record straight. I talked to Mr. Cooper in 2014 on the phone, and we discussed the two-tier. I was opposed to it, and he was for it. We talked about it for a few minutes, and then we agreed to disagree. So Mr. Cooper did vote for the two-tier. If he didn't, it would never pass. But at one time, I was for the two-tier. If I can read something to you, this is a memo that Cindy Erickson put out in February 20th, 2015. And the title is, "This is Truly the Twilight Zone." Read this. "I was looking at old Voice articles online for stuff from Clark Vernon and came across this note from Gene Garner in one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. This is dated June 24th, 2014. Now, I won't bore you with the whole thing, but the basis is I agreed that the only way to get an assessment increase was to put it on us and not on the unimproved lot owners, because they had proved they wouldn't go along with it. They wouldn't approve it. And I went on to say that I thought this was a good idea, and we don't pay very much, only $36 a month. I would like to keep as many people of these non-resident owners as friends, and hopefully one day they'll be neighbors. So I started out supporting the two-tier, but it happened that I then went and read Hutchins v. Bella Vista, and I saw where, because they had a two-tier, it bankrupted Bella Vista. They couldn't afford to keep the streets up, and they couldn't afford to pay the police for it, so they became a municipality. I then changed my mind and said, I think this is a bad idea. So I did change my mind. At first I was for the two-tier, and then I was against the two-tier. And I don't apologize for that. I'd like to read you one last thing. Our electric company is First Electric, and they put out a monthly magazine, and they have trivia in there. And there just happened to be a trivia that caught my eye. And here it is. Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. George Bernard Shaw.
Okay, here's a question. It's, actually, it says, is it true that CCI has started a lawsuit against the POA? And I happen to know he has, and that's posted on our website also, We the People, For the People. There's a document under important information. And again, if you need further information about that, you can go to Mr. Cooper himself. What, I'm sorry, I did kind of make that wrong. It's WeTheHSVPeople.com. That's what it is. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I saw it underneath the sign for both zones. Yes, that's it. Thank you for pointing that out. If the POA gets developer rights, do they get 10 votes per property? I don't know. Somebody asked that. And then somebody asked, why was Laurie Street Post taken down on Nextdoor almost as soon as it was posted? Well, it caused a stir, so they took it down. And now I'm booted off Nextdoor. So that's okay. All right. Let's see, next question here. If somebody has asked that, why don't we have a petition to fire an alley? Because that isn't the way the process works, so that's why we don't have a petition. So what is the difference between easements and setbacks? Who wants to answer that? Anybody? Okay, Tom Blakeman.
Well, as Jim pointed out, the easement surrounds your entire piece of property, and it's for utilities typically. And if you're gonna build something on it, or you wanna combine lots or whatever, you have to get a waiver of that easement from whoever owns it or controls it, and in this case, this is Cooper Communities. A setback is another rule that basically says you have to have the front of your building, your house, a certain number of feet from the roadway or from the edge of your property. And that's to keep people from building too close to the road, and one day you want to, widen the road or whatever. You want to keep the neighborhood looking nice and whatever. You don't want somebody's house sticking out halfway in the street. That's what a setback is. It's almost in every building development code that there is.
But keep in mind, we're not lawyers. So what we tell you is usually our opinion.
We had that screen up there earlier. We might have to
Put
flip
it
back
back
to
up.
that. Okay, is there a difference between a proxy and a ballot?
Here again, we're not lawyers, so I don't know. But proxy is the word typically used for, like if you own stock in IBM or something and they're going to have their annual meeting, you'll get a proxy in the mail. They want to appoint directors or whatever. You could go to their annual meeting, but you send in the proxy. It's basically giving someone else the right to vote on, the way that you direct them to vote, so you don't have to be there in person. That's what we do here in the village.
Not everybody.
Thank you.
You're right. It's
ahead.
basically a proxy is when you vote not in person. A ballot is when you vote in person.
Simple answer, that's better.
Well, like I say, I'm not a lawyer. That's my opinion.
Okay, so why does Canadian Max Lamarchant, I may not be saying his name correctly, who has a developer voice to the CEO and board on the CMP?
Lori,
Anybody want to speak to that? And he says, why has pocket developers like CNU, I guess CNU is his website or something? May Lamarchant be given access to HSV POA CEO board? I don't know all that.
they're talking about that guy with
The Canadian
Right,
gentleman who's
right.
been sending out positive vote yes, and he's.
I don't know what the questioner means by access. I mean, I wouldn't think that he has any more access to the board than we do.
He's on the list of favorable builders.
Oh, okay.
Builders Guild, he's on the Builders
Yeah.
Guild.
That's all I know about it.
Oh, he's friends on Facebook with Twigs. Oh, no. Oh, could each presenter give a brief description of your background prior to Hot Springs Village?
I'll start. I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I'm a graduate mechanical engineer. And I worked most of my life for Arco Chemical Company in engineering, maintenance, and construction management. And retired in 1998 and moved here.
Thank you. Tom?
Sure. I'm a graduate engineer also. I also have an MBA. I also have a Texas real estate broker's license, which I've had for about 25 years. And I had my own real estate company, small one, in Houston for most of that time. I also, prior to that, worked in industry for several different companies, including Big Oil. And so that's pretty much it.
Okay, Bob.
I'm ashamed. I can't stand up to these guys. Now, I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin. Came to Arkansas in '75 with Planters Peanuts up in Fort Smith. Worked for them, was shipping and receiving and warehouse manager for them. And basically, when I retired up there, we came down here in '02. Now you know where I'm coming from.
Okay, Gene?
I'm retired U.S. Air Force. I spent 22 years, 10 months, and 24 days, but who's counting? After I retired, I went to work for Abbott Labs in Dallas, Texas, and I spent 15 years there. We built microprocessor controlled blood analyzers, and just as an advertisement, Abbott was the first company to have a AIDS test, and because of it, we saved thousands of lives through the Red Cross, because so many people had AIDS that had donated blood. We moved here in 1995, so we've been here a few years.
Okay. I guess you might want to know my background, but they didn't ask specifically. But I'll tell you, I have a master's degree and I'm a retired speech-language pathologist. So I have always worked with people that have communication disorders. And believe me, there's been a lot of them coming my way lately. Why are the POA-owned lots being counted in the vote since they are not current in their assessments? Does anybody know if that's accurate?
State that again?
Why are the POA-owned lots being counted in this vote since they are not current in their assessments?
Unless something has changed, the only way that the POA-owned lots factor in any vote is they are voted in accordance with the actual vote. So in other words, if the yay side gets 60% and the nay side gets 40%, that's the way the POA lots are voted, 60-40. It's my understanding that the reason for that is to ensure a quorum.
True.
Okay, thank you.
May I opine on that?
Yes, go yes, sure, go Tom.
I understand how that works, and that's, as far as I know, correct. There's nothing about that, though, in the declarations that I'm aware of. I believe that was a policy that was put in place by a board of directors at some point. because they wanted to get the quorum. Now, I think it's fair to make the case that if they're non-performing lots, then they shouldn't even be counted as a quorum. However, that's not how the rules have been set up. So that's what we have to deal with at this point in time.
Can I say one thing, Laura?
Sure. Go.
David Twiggs put together two glossy brochures for his plan, and he has a bunch of platted lot pictures, overhead views, and it shows a whole bunch of lots that are owned by Arkansas Department of Lands in here. Now, I don't know how many it is, but I'm assuming it's true, but it says, I didn't know that until I just read it last week. And it shows a whole bunch of
Okay.
lots belong to Arkansas Department of Land.
Thank you. Which two of all the amendments are the most detrimental to property owners, and why?
Which one?
Which of them are most detrimental?
Which two
Which two?
are the most detrimental?
In my opinion, it's
Duration.
two that affect the
Okay, Gene.
CCI's vote on assessments, the regular assessments and the special assessments, because as it stands right now, without Cooper's vote, they can't pass a special assessment or a regular assessment. And if the POA goes back to the unimproved lot owners, they can pass any kind of assessment they want. So the only thing standing between us and higher assessments is Cooper's CCI's veto.
Thank you.
That's why-
Plus they are our only protection against a runaway, crazy POA board of directors. In other words, one of the reasons that Cooper is involved now is the people, I don't know who it was, and I can't say that it was we the people, but the people of the village went to Mr. Cooper and asked if he would help us fight what's going on now. If we strip him of all his rights, we have nobody to ask for help except ourselves.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. The number on those two proposals that you were just talking about?
Got the cheat sheet?
You're looking it up.
Article, I don't know what number it is, Article 10, Section 3, basis and maximum annual assessments.
They'll look it up, and I'm going to ask another question. Tom, is the Arkansas Nonprofit Corporation Act of 1993 a good fit for Hot Springs Village?
No.
Well, that's a good question. It's quite a big deal, really, and the state obviously passed it for a reason back in 1993. Whether it's a good fit or not, I think needs to be something that the membership gets to really debate before we make this irrevocable decision. Now, there are some good things about it, and there are some bad things about it. We covered mostly the bad things, I think, this evening, but there are some good things as well. The idea that it answers many unanswered questions and all that happy verbiage that they use, I don't buy that. I think it's something that we could vote on next year if we'd like to, but we need to do a lot more education of the membership on why we really need it.
Okay. Question is, will you publish all questions and answers on We the People website? I'm asked this every single time, and I've always had to answer no, because we don't have enough manpower. Unlike the POA and the Board of Directors in Leslie and Alley, they have paid personnel that can put these questions on, and unfortunately, we don't.
Those two articles were 9 and 10.
Okay, Okay, what can we do to ensure the votes are counted correctly? Can CCI be present to count votes? This question is kind of why I'm no longer on Nextdoor. So,
Pray.
anybody want to answer that? We don't know. We've been asking. Anybody else want to speak about it? I know that there's been some connection between the accounting firm and Miss Nellie, verified, and I didn't. There wasn't a question. I'm speaking. Yeah, the EGP, well, I'm not saying that the board didn't vote for it prior. What I'm saying is there has been a connection made, determined, and I got an email back from Miss Nally about that. So, and she didn't not deny any of it. She just had a lot of reasons why it happened that way. So just know, we're all kind of concerned about it too. Which is who put out all of our marketing, who put out all their marketing information for Vote Yes that we paid for. And not only did she pay $50,000 from last year for the yes vote, and nobody knew anything about it. I didn't find out about it back in California. I don't know what yes vote that was, but okay. But anyway, there's also a personal relationship with a friend that's in the accounting firm EPG. There you have it. So there's nothing we can do about that. That is really the bottom line to this. Is the $100,000 budget for the RV restoration misleading? Only materials, no mention of cost, in-house labor? Well, that kind of usually how we get the budget information, not line item. Anybody else want to answer that?
Well, they are line item, but they are like throwing stuff at a wall and see what'll stick. Like they'll have a pickup truck in there for a superintendent that says $50,000. And it's just,
No, Jim, it's only 45,000.
oh, okay, okay. Well, it probably costs $30,000. But if you look at the budget and look at the backup, it has all the requested capital expenditures listed. And I'm sure that there's probably no one other than, say, Jason Temple, somebody that's given them a number of $100,000. And that's just, you said upgrade the RV park?
Yeah, but then the upgrades.
And that's to put in sewage and Wi-Fi, cable,
Wi-Fi.
sewage and cable, and put
Yeah.
a bathroom in.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a lot of money for that to me, but,
Okay. So, okay, the next question. Mr. Cooper bailed out of Hot Springs Village 12 years ago, and interior lot owners lost their shirts while Mr. Cooper walked away with his pockets full of profit money. He left us with maintenance nightmares. Why should we ever trust him again? You want to answer that, Gene?
I don't understand the question.
Well, they're really stating that, they're not trusting.
Well, they just said here that Cooper is still in the village, and he's never left. He has 1,200 lots, or 1,200 acres, sorry. So I don't understand the question.
and he's building more stuff, so it's,
I guess about the only thing I might add to this is when Cooper left, the country was in rough shape. Business was losing their shirt. Now, I don't know what some people think that Cooper should have stayed and done what? You think Mr. Cooper and Cooper Communities was gonna, out of the kindness of his heart, start taking care of stuff that was poorly managed by the POA, or that we didn't have enough money to pay for, so Mr. Cooper was, I guess, expected to step in and pay for it? He wouldn't be in business today. And remember, he has, what, 4 or 5 other communities in Arkansas. So if everybody thought that he was going or should have done that the same way,
Okay.
It's
I'd like
ridiculous.
just
Do you
to
have something to add?
add, just a small thing. The POA now has a kind of a logo. It says "Yes for Independence." That's independence from CCI. Now, do they want CCI to leave, or do they want CCI to stay? Again, I don't understand the questions they're asking.
Well, they want him to stay when he could fix things and give us money.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah, we need CCI to come down here and tell us what to do, because we're not smart enough ourselves, and I think the POA has proved that.
So we were asked, can we the people demand and raise money to provide an accounting firm to count votes along with the POA firm? No. Yes? Okay. Do you want a microphone?
No.
Okay.
I was not the chairman, but I was on the committee when we were able to interview, I think it was 3. I was not the chairman, but I was on the committee when we were able to, I think we interviewed or got the final group that came out of an interview of 3 different accounting firms that year. It was in 15. And and we did interview them as a group, and we accepted them as a group. Now, the POA doesn't have to keep them around. Each year, they have the decision whether they want to hire somebody else, interview somebody else, or go ahead and keep them. So that option comes up all the time. So
And how about someone from the village? A CPA firm from the
don't
village?
know.
That would make sense.
yes, the audit committee. And George Parker was the chairman like 2 or 3 years in a row. Who is the chairman now? Is it you? Okay, so it's up to her. It's up to her, Ms. Lurie.
What effect will the Cooper lawsuit have on the declaration vote? I think that's gonna have to be answered again,
That's a legal question. I think.
unless, yeah, it's a legal question, so, sorry. We only have about less than 5 minutes left. So hang in there, we'll get some of these answered and go from there. Again, I'm not doing the questions that you can ask Mr. Cooper. Tom, please expand proposal 3. You assume we know the conversation you had with Tom Weiss against selling sewer to Jessieville Water and Fountain Lake. Can you expand on that?
Sure, no problem. As usual, the board packet came out about a day or 2 before the board meeting, which was the first time I really heard anything about Jessieville, and I objected. And of course, it took a couple of board meetings before they finally approved it, but in the process, I just felt like it was violating the declarations, number one. It didn't make necessarily any good business sense. I mean, frankly, we're going to get $13,000 a year as profit, supposedly, but our legal fees probably have already eaten most of that up. And it opens the door for other people to want to come in. And there's a lot of businesses along Highway 7 that have septic tanks and sewer problems. But I challenged the idea on the basis that there is a sentence or a paragraph in the declarations that says you shouldn't do this. But the sentence does go on to say, well, but you know, if for some reason you have to do it, or you do it, then you got to meet all these laws and so forth. So the POA took the position that, well, you know, it says we shouldn't do it, but if we do it, we just have to meet the laws. My position was, hey, the first words are, don't do it. You're not supposed to do it. It's prohibited. And so we got into a back and forth on that, and I ended up, of course, getting my picture on the front page of the paper that week. And the POA went ahead, like they do with most things, and everybody voted yes, as I recall, which I find also strange that every board member always votes yes on everything almost. Rubber stamp.
Rubber stamp. There we go.
So anyway, that's the story, and I'm sticking to my guns. Why are they going to take it out of the declarations completely? They must be worried about something or have a plan to do something, or they wouldn't be taking the wording out in this item that they want you to vote on.
Okay, I think we are about 2 minutes out, and so, oh, here's a good question, then we'll wrap it up. Do we have to pay Nally a fee if she's fired? Do you know this by chance, Ms. Mermel? Or does anybody else know if there's a contract?
The lawsuit asked for information on the golden parachute.
Oh, Mr. Cooper's lawsuit? Okay.
CCI.
If you get the contract, you'll find out what it is.
If CCI's lawsuit is upheld in court, we're gonna find out a whole bunch of information that
So
we
we-
don't know now.
Good, we're gonna hope for that. Okay, and one last final, it's just kind of a comment that somebody here, a property owner said. They said, no way am I going to walk to a store, let alone ride my bicycle. So the idea of having a town center that's over here at the Woodlands, and I live on the other side, is just crazy to me. And also, mostly a lot of us just shop by online these days, so it just doesn't make sense to have that. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Lord,
Do
I like-
you have one more thing to say?
I'd like to thank Paul for helping us and
Oh,
getting
yeah,
all
Paul,
of
big
our
time.
sound and our video things set up.
Well, stay
It worked
tuned.
well.
Stay tuned to our website, because we will continue to post information. This was our last formal forum. We committed to 3. There might be more in the future, but there's no commitment. But we will continue to support candidates that we think are going to keep their backbone and vote for the property owners. Thank you.
Who do you trust? Remember, who do you
Lori?
trust?
We have signs in the
Oh,
lobby.
yeah, we have signs for sale, so please, I know you may have purchased one, but again, it's our fundraiser. So they're just $10. So buy one for your neighbor, buy one for a non-resident property owner. Just buy them. Thank you.